Hey guys, so this is Josh from Midnight Auto Repair coming back to you after a brief hiatus. And I apologize, and I'll explain that here in a little bit because I'm not gone, I'm not going anywhere, but I do have big news and a lot of information for most of you. But today I wanted to do my final ride and drive video from Erie, Pennsylvania on not just my Monte Carlo, but we all know that I'm a fan of sleepers. And you know, before you could find one of these buggers here, there was a turboed 3.8 that came in a few GM products. And I'm about to introduce you to one of those today because for me it's been a poster car. It's one of those ones I really enjoy and I'm privileged to enjoy to drive. So stay tuned guys, and I'll be right back with you. Alright guys, so I brought the Monte Carlo here because, first off, you gotta love this thing. Supercharged 3.8 out of a 98 GTP, 3.4 inch pulleys, easy performance downpipe. And what's fun is, this is something that I did on a budget. Actually, this is the third platform this motor's been in. Because the 3800s just run forever. They work. And in this case, it's something low buck you can do, but GM never did this from the factory. This was something I did on my own. And in this case, I'm going to show you something that GM did from the factory. That was really cool. So what you're looking at here is an 86 Buick Regal T-Type. This thing is super rare because everybody knows this car as the Grand National. Blacked out, chrome wheels, Grand National. But I bet most of you guys didn't know that they actually made a plainclothes version of it called the T-Type, which means you could get it in color. Which to me is even more of a sleeper than my Monte Carlo over there, because you could buy this off the showroom floor, throw some regular Regal wheels on it, and just take fools to church on that one. And they wouldn't understand why until you pop the hood. So let me introduce you to the Regal T-Type. Stay tuned. Alright guys, so this Regal T-Type, what makes it unique? What makes it the poster car of my childhood? Because the funny thing is they made one of these, it was called the GNX, and as the GNX was being made, it was actually faster than that year's Corvette. But you see, on the T-Type, you only got a few indicators of what this actually is. Most of the time, guys would leave these emblems there, swap out the wheels, and they would eliminate just this little T for the T-Type to indicate that there's anything going on. But such a cool car, and this is such a nice example of this car. Now, here's where the real fun lies. 3.8 liters of Fury with a big old honking turbo just hanging out there. Now, if I remember right, these were like rated for 260 horsepower, which was a way of making the insurance company think that they tried. But I mean, most guys took these, turned the wick up on them, and 330, 340 with a stock turbo wasn't unheard of. And then guys would do upgraded intercoolers, they do bigger turbos, and a lot of these engines ended up making 400 plus horsepower. And it's really nifty to get a chance to drive one. Now, the other thing too is this braking system is actually designed to go with this engine, and if that master cylinder ever breaks, there's a guy that rebuilds those, and they are very expensive to have done or replaced. So you find a Grand National or a T-Type and it needs a master cylinder, it's not a parts store $55 deal, just to inform you. But I always thought this was cool too. You never really got to see, unless you open the hood, Buick turbocharged. And just a fun old car. I gotta push the latch in again, because I mean, you see these things, just a nice clean car. On the inside, the only way you really know that anything's going on is just that nice little T in the center of the steering wheel. And then we have, let me see here, a boost gauge right in the cluster. And that's really about it. There's nothing too fancy here. But give me a minute, I will set up the camera and we'll go for a ride. Alright guys, so I'm going to bring you along with me here. As you can see, this is a factory radio delete car, so we don't have to worry about, you know, any of that copyright protected music or anything like that. Plus, who really wants to get in the way of turbo whooshy noises? Now something like this, you always let them come up to temperature. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna just gently take her through the neighborhood and let her get nice and warmed up before we do our usual little power test. Oh, this is such a cool car to be behind the wheel of. Are there faster cars out there? Yeah, of course. Time has come a long way since 1986. But this car, when it was new, it really was something special. Like, it was an experience. You know, especially to get something like this, that guys would drive Corvettes, guys had RS Camaros, Z28s, and the funny thing is this little two-door kind of old manish car, you know, this was one of those ones where if your grandpa showed up in it and you didn't know what it was, you'd think, ah, hey, there's grandpa's coupe, you know, his old Regal, not knowing that if he really wanted to put his foot down, the thing would go and it would take off like hell. And that's kind of the fun of this, is the sleeper aspect from the factory. When you bought a Grand National, yes, it was a Regal, but it had the straight up black paint job, 8555 black with the chrome wheels. And most guys, after they'd been duped once or twice by a Grand National, had learned that if you see that, you stay away from that. That car is going to give you a very bad day unless you got something built. And back in 86, you probably had like a 70 Chevelle SS, or you had a 70 Grand Sport, you know, 455. And those were cars that I don't even know if they were as fast as this back in the day. I know they weren't as fast as this with 8 cylinders, whereas this just needed 6, and that nice little, I believe it's a Garrett turbo they put on these. And that's really all it needed, was the proper amount of horsepower put to this. Now, you can't just do this setup with a regular 231 back in the day, because that's what they based this particular setup upon, was the V6 that they put in the lesser Regals. Now, from what I understand, they were actually implementing this engine in for purposes of like road racing and stuff like that. So it was developed as a race engine, and it was developed to be a high RPM, torquey, turbocharged V6 to fit within a class. Well, GM wanted something sporty to put on their lot, and here we are. We have the Grand National T-Type. I'm going to give a little extended ride on this because this car really just deserves that. So here we're going to do our little power hill. See, there's a lot more there. I just kind of leaned into it a little bit, but I didn't give it the whole hog. I will at some point here in the drive because, well, it's half the fun. But we're also in a residential neighborhood, and I'm not trying to be that guy. But, yeah. The T-Type. You guys gotta forgive me, too. I'm trying to enjoy this experience as well, because it's not every day that you get to be behind the wheel of one of these. Or see one. I mean, they're not a common car. You'll actually find the Grand National more than you will the T-Type. And normally, if somebody's blown up the motor in one of these over the last, 20 years or so, they normally just kind of do what everybody else does, and they put a boosted, or not boosted, but a V8 or something in it. And they'll eliminate the turboed 6, which kind of ruins the magic of it, because at that point you could just have a Monte Carlo SS or Old Cutlass, which are great cars. You get one of those, pull the 305 out, and you put a 350 in it, or bigger, or put an LS in it. They're a great car. But something like this, the magic of it is that little turbocharged 6 they put under the hood that just would slap all of them off the showroom floor and not even think twice of it. And I'm not going to try to be abusive to this car. It's not my car. I'm very appreciative to have the the ability to drive this example. And I would like to take advantage of that and not ruin a trust, because I like doing these videos, and I love the fact that people trust me enough to just hand me their car and say, hey, go ahead and do this. But anyhow, back to the vehicle at hand. So I believe they did in '84. They did the Grand National was a sticker package, I want to say. It wasn't even a turbocharged vehicle yet. It was what they did in the 80s. When they couldn't make horsepower, they made them look fast. And then in '85, it's when you adopted this kind of technology to go with it, where you got this turbocharged V6, which, I mean, it would get up and haul. Now, it also doesn't sound like your average 231 that they put in these. The little basic 3.8 that was usually hooked to a quadrijet of some sort, usually like a dual jet or even like a 2GC or something. This multi-port injection, I believe, batch fired, not sequential. But as things went on later, because when you got into the Grand National, and then eventually in '87, when everything came to the peak of what it was, you got the GNX, which was the Grand National Experimental. And a lot of that was done by McLaren. They would actually send these Grand Nationals over to McLaren, and everything would just get hyper-tuned. by McLaren. I believe they changed the turbos, they changed a lot of the setup, and that was the car that Corvettes feared. You know, if you bought a Corvette in '87, even if you bought the LT4, the twin cam, just the ultimate rocket ship motor they put in those, this, I believe, was still faster. Or should I say the GNX in '87 was still faster, which is why GM didn't want it anywhere near their showroom as far as the Chevy showroom, because kind of hard to justify a car that can beat your world competing Corvette and have it just be a two-door luxury coupe, nothing fancy on the outside, nothing fancy on the inside, just up for the occasion when you called upon it. GM definitely didn't want that in their showroom, because they would have sold a whole lot less Corvettes than they would have these if they would have done this treatment to like the Monte Carlo SS. We would be talking about Monte SS's, you know, with all of them having this setup instead of 305s that, I mean, a 305, it'll make power. It's not anything that you're going to have just earth-shaking power out of. A 305, comparatively, if you get a 400 horse 305, you've got a very, very, very potent 305. After that, you're putting a 350 in it, because the valves are too small and there's nothing you can really do to them short of put a cam and new heads on, and what you're going to spend on that, you're going to buy a whole 350 for and then give it the proper treatment. This, on the other hand, if they would have started with just this engine, the guys would just be hossing out 3.8 turbos, and it would have been a commonplace thing, which GM did decide to finally put it in something that still wasn't on the Chevy lot, because it also would have stolen sales from the Corvette, and that was the Typhoon and the Cyclone, which ended up with very similar technology, but it ended up with that technology on a 4.3 liter V6, which those things are just heralded as being the best things since sliced bread, and they are some of the most desirable GM trucks of that era, was the Cyclone and the Typhoon. And they exist because of this. They exist because of the Grand National, they exist because of the T-Type, they exist because people did have a want for that. And they were an expensive truck back then, just like this was a little more expensive, and without knowing what it is, if you were to say, hey, I've got a Buick Regal Limited, radio delete package, no frills, nothing fancy, and you were asking top money for it, it's kind of hard to justify without them ever actually taking it for a drive and realizing that all the money that was spent in the proper ways, and it was to make this faster. Alright guys, so I had to let the GoPro cool off for a minute because it had overheated. So I'm just going to leave you on with one last really good blast with this thing, because I don't have much battery left and the GoPro is getting extremely hot. So I want to get on it, give you the good turbo whooshy noises, and summarize it with, guys, I'm moving to North Carolina here in a week. I'm going to give you guys a lot of shorts. I'm going to try to give you guys the videos I can, because I'm moving for my daughter. I'm trying to become a better father, and I can do it better there. Alright guys, this is Josh from Midnight Auto Repair saying I appreciate you guys hanging out with me and bearing with me for the move and everything else. So Like, share, and subscribe, and have a wonderful day. Here's some turbo whooshy noises. Good times. Good times. Thank you all.